Hello, BookTube. I've got some mail for you today in the calm before the storm. It's a quiet, still, overcast, warm, mild day, but weather is on the way. Rain is coming. It's going to be a rainy, windy night. I think that rain and wind is a harbinger of a change in the weather, but I don't think that change is going to come right away. I think tomorrow is also going to be fairly mild. Then the temperature drops, and we might get snow for the end of the week. so the weather's all over the map, but I knew you wanted an update, and it was there were even fugitive little patches of sunlight much earlier today. So the mail is unmenaced. There's periodicals, for instance. We got a bunch of periodicals. I got latest issue of Architectural Digest. There is Gwyneth Paltrow on the cover, and this is once upon a time, a long time ago. Used to be able to say about Architectural Digest that it was the way the other half lived, but it's not. It's the way the 1% of the 1% live. But it's still kind of fun. You see things that you're never going to have on your own, or that I'm never going to have on my own. You wonder, would I like that? You know, would I like that? Would that be in any way appealing? My number one complaint with the spreads that I see in Architectural Digest is that the places don't look like anyone lives in them. They don't look like anyone could live in them. They don't look like a livable space that was cleaned up for the photographers. They look like a museum. But there is one detail of Gwyneth Paltrow's new house. Who knows how many houses she has? Ask her. When you wake her up earlier in the morning and ask her, she probably wouldn't know the answer herself. But look at this. Look at that for a bathroom. There's a shower right here. But then there's a sort of inset bath in the middle there with these tiled walls. How lovely is that? I know exactly what I would do to improve it, and that would be to get a whole bunch of plants, just surround that little pool in the middle with plants, including plants that drape down, so that I would have a little tessellated pathway to that bathing pool and have it surrounded in green instead of stone. That's what I would do to fix it. But, of course, the number one thing that strikes me about all of these Architectural Digest spreads is the surgical absence of books. These people don't read. They collect houses, but they don't read. And then the other thing that I got, I recently renewed my subscription to this because they offered me like 2 years for $10 or something like that. And I know that print magazines are struggling. I did it a little bit reluctantly because the last dozen issues of this magazine haven't really done anything for me. And boy, am I glad I did. This is the latest issue of Yankee Magazine. The Home and Gardens issue, but there's a lot more than Home and Gardens in here. This is incredible. Just an incredible issue. There's hardly a dull moment in it. A great article on the Champlain Islands in Vermont. A great article on local newspapers in New England struggling to survive when local newspapers are under the axe. Let me get you to a little visual on that piece because it struck a pang with me. Yes, Hard Pressed is the name of the piece. John Marcus is the author. I don't think I know that author. Did a fantastic job. The subtitle of the piece is, "With New England's long tradition of small-town newspapers under threat, communities and journalists are fighting to stick together and stay informed." And one of the things that's shown is the Vermont Standard. And I immediately thought, why have I never been published in the Vermont Standard? Do any of these small-town New England newspapers want a weekly book column? I produce a weekly book column. Why should small-town Iowa and small-town Georgia have all the fun? My rates are very reasonable. I'm going to have to check with the Vermont Standard and see what they have to say. But there was also a fantastic article in here on Provincetown, which is a town at the end of the Cape Cod that I just love. A whole bunch of other stuff in here. Even the cooking articles that ordinarily wouldn't appeal to me really did appeal to me this time around. I've never followed their advice, but still very happy about this. Don't know if all my other subscription issues of Yankee Magazine are downhill from here. And then I got one other periodical. Speak of the devil. I got the Bedford Times Press from Bedford, Iowa. Which has it's a small-town newspaper, very much so. I got a little circular that doesn't do me any good since I'm 1,000 miles away from where I could apply it. And also there's an interior sports section. Here we have some of the local urchins. They are titans of wrestling. There are also Titans of which one is that? Is that hockey? They're full color pictures though, really really nice. Obviously, if any of you who know anything about Iowa will know they are just a bit enthusiastic for their local sports, whether it's high school or college. They're a little bit sports mad. But the Bedford Times Press is very much a local newspaper, so you get the transcripts of town council meetings, you get the transcripts of 911 calls, you get the latest civic ordinances for Bedford, Iowa, or for Taylor County. So you would think that getting this as a print subscription in the mail every week would have no interest to you at all if you live in Minnesota or Pittsburgh or Massachusetts. But there is one thing in here that's entirely universal, and that is me. You open up every issue of the Bedford Times Press, you get me. I have a book column. I haven't had an ex libris book column in an Iowa newspaper since before most of you were born. And that's exactly what it was called. I could not find a usable image of my original artwork from my original Ex Libris column. And as far as I know, the guy who created that artwork died a long time ago, so I couldn't ask him to revise it. So I just used my my sketch icon from Open Letters. And this is a weekly column that I write for the Bedford Times Press about bookish subjects far and wide. It is very entertaining reading. If you have a local newspaper, just the local thing, the kind of thing, the thing that does the kind of thing that the Bedford Times Press does, where it's a decidedly local newspaper. And if perhaps you have ever taken that newspaper and thought, gee, it'd be nice if there was something a little bit readable in here. You know, it's fun to get a write-up of some of the games that I went to, but it'd be nice if something that was a little bit more sustenance for the mind. Well, have their editor get in touch with my editor at the Bedford Times Press in Bedford, Iowa, or have them get in touch with me. They can run my column every week. I'd like nothing better than for you to be reading my stuff in your own paper, but you can subscribe to the Bedford Times Press or the Lennox Timetable, which also runs my column in Iowa. In 2021, I got one of my fondest dreams, which was to once again be a book columnist for a small town newspaper in Iowa. I'm not a book columnist for two, but if your county in Iowa has a small paper, feel free to put the elbow on them, as it were, at church or at the next Little League game, whenever you come across them. Let's see how this Ex Libris starts, shall we? I've been reading at a great gallop for the whole of 2022 so far, which has felt fantastic, as you can imagine. Partly I was helped by the fact that large chunks of the publishing and journalistic communities tend to ease their foot off the gas pedal during the December holidays and tend to keep a relaxed posture right through the first half of January. Probably many publicists and editors are only just crawling back to eating and drinking normally, the sinful creatures. And then right at the tempo, as the tempo was beginning to tick back up, circumstances intervened again. I packed a bag and took my bossy little schnauzer up to Vermont for an impromptu vacation up on the back roads and under the cold calm of the trees. We were pampered by our hosts, and I looked forward to a week blissfully unplugged from the world of deadlines and the reading of new releases. But at the end of that week, a monster snowstorm of historic proportions slammed into Boston while I was snugly ensconced in Vermont. For an entire day, while the storm was churning its way toward the Bay State, I was watching it on the news from a comfy couch. And on the very day when we were planning on returning to Boston, the entire city was whited out in a gigantic blizzard. Pretty good stuff, huh? Pretty good stuff. And then that column goes on to talk about some February new releases. If you want that every week, something to clip out and put it in your keepsake book, the Bedford Times Press paywalls their material. Now that I've said on this channel that I understand both positions, right? Some journals paywall everything because they don't want to give away anything for free. They're struggling to make their budget as it is. Others don't paywall anything, figuring if you like it, you'll do the right thing. I don't know where that second attitude is really grounded, since I'd be willing to bet that if 1,000 people are listening to me right now, I'd be willing to bet that of those 1,000, probably 950 use Wikipedia at least once a week, if not once a day. And I'd be willing to bet that of that 950, probably 10 actually contribute money to Wikipedia. So I don't know where that second attitude about paywalling comes from. I myself am in a lucky position to be relatively indifferent to the subject. I have those of you who are new to the channel, I have many paymasters, and a couple of them do well by me. So I don't really have to care whether my work is paywalled anywhere else. Nevertheless, it's the Bedford Times Press decision, and they have decided to paywall everything. So the only way you're ever going to read this column is to subscribe to the Bedford Times Press. I leave a link on every video. I would be happy if you did that. You will get my weekly column every week from now until the end of time. We will be growing old and senile together. And, of course, one last thing I'll harp on before we get to the mail. If you decide that you want to subscribe to the Bedford Times Press in order to get my column, if you live in Oklahoma or the Texas Panhandle or whatever, and you have no reason to read a Taylor County, Iowa newspaper other than my column, but you just want it, feel free to mention that to the Bedford Times Press. Feel free to drop them a nice little email and say, I love this column. That's the reason I subscribe it. I mean, they've been nothing but wonderful to me, but that always helps. Any freelancer will tell you that always helps. So now we'll move on to the mail. I have two packages in cardboard. One is as thin as it's wafer thin, and the other is a fairly heavy box. So the box, I'm pretty sure, is a finished copy. This other thing is so small, it could be a slim volume of poetry, which would be a little bit on the awkward side. Oh, no, okay, oh, great. Oh, fantastic. All right. Okay, wow, look at this. Look at all this paperwork. Do we really need this much paperwork? This comes out as a $15 paperback today, and this is The War on the Poor by Eric Vuillard, who did... what was it called? The Order of the Day, which I loved, and which is also a tiny little book like this. So this has a paperback release. I did not review this, so I will not be on here. But boy, oh boy, is it loaded with reviews. Okay, look at this. Fantastic. From all over the world. Great. Well, okay. This author is amazing anyway. Let's see what he has to say. I've got 10 pages of documents, so I have no idea where the book description is. We'll just read off the cover. In the 16th century, the Protestant Reformation launched an attack on privilege and the Catholic Church, but it rapidly became an established bourgeois authority itself. Rural laborers and the urban poor, who were still being promised equality in heaven, began to question why they shouldn't have equality here and now on earth. There ensued a furious struggle between the powerful, the comfortable Protestants, and the others, the wretched. The latter were led by a number of theologians, one of whom has left his mark on history through his determination and sheer energy. His name was Thomas Müntzer, and he set Germany on fire. The War of the Poor recounts his story, that of an insurrection through the word with a capital W. So fantastic. I can certainly recommend this author. I don't need 10 pages of documentation on a 10-page book. But then we've got, all right, so we've got the long and the short of it, because that was a very tiny book. But the next one is a big, heavy package, so it will be a finished copy for sure. Let's see what we have here. Oh, no, okay. It is a finished copy, but it's a double. Oh, that doesn't happen that often. This is by John Davis, and this is Waterloo Sunrise, London from the 60s to Thatcher, which we already saw. We saw it just last week, I think. So, okay, so that's a bit of a shame, but this is exactly, with no reason to, I'm sure that any of you who saw this last time are still watching now. This is exactly what it says. This is just a panoramic social history of London for a very, very, going from austerity to the swinging London, and then to Margaret Thatcher, who's widely regarded by London citizens of a certain age as a catastrophic event, sort of like a KT iridium boundary, that's some sort of disaster that happened to London and to England broad. This is a double, but I still haven't read the first copy that I got, so I guess if one of you is interested in this, I'd be happy to send it to you. But that is our mail for today, the long and the short of it. Tiny little thing, not even the length of the footnotes in Waterloo Sunrise, and then a great big thing from the great folks at Princeton University Press. Plus, Yankee Magazine, Architectural Digest with a state-of-the-art bathroom that I still could fix. It could still be fixed. Put greenery in there. And the Bedford Times Press, which has a weekly book column by yours truly that is quite enjoyable. It's enjoyable to read, and it's very different. It's a very different experience from writing book reviews. Very different. The one tiny element that those two things share in common is that whenever I write anything, I want to entertain you. I want it to be smooth reading. Even if it's going to infuriate you, I want it to be enjoyable to read. But other than that, it's completely different. And it's been taking me a while to reclaim that particular voice, the voice of a columnist. A columnist is not reviewing anything. A columnist is talking and telling stories and asking for stories. It's a very different thing. I ultimately think that it is the closest kind of writing to my own heart. So it's been wonderful to fall right back into a thing that I used to say 45 years ago. I used to say, I write my column on the weekends. And now I say that again. Now I am back in the position of saying that. The weekend is just fine for me to file my column at the beginning of the week. But I would love to have that conversation with more people. So feel free to let me know if you know any venues. One of those beleaguered New England newspapers seems like a good bet to me. But anyway, that's the mail for today. I think a little more mail is coming, but so is rain. Oh my, you can tell from how dejected the bean looks that rain is definitely coming. Nothing we can do about that. I will take her out as late as possible before the first drops start to fall and hope for the best. She sometimes categorically refuses to go outside in the rain. I'll just have to hope. But I will wrap this up for now, and I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.